As I was preparing this homily for today, the gospel reading on the 70 that went out is one that's always been intriguing. And I thought, how would I start this gospel today? And I thought, perhaps it may be appropriate to start it with like a help wanted bulletin, if there's something in the bulletin. And it would go maybe something like this. In need of many people of various ages to work in small groups within the community at large. They must be enthusiastic and willing to meet new people. Good verbal and organizational skills are an asset, but not necessary. Information and training will be provided. Now, you will be required some overnight stays. However, accommodation and meals are the responsibility of the individual and will not be prearranged prior to travel. Sounds pretty inviting and daunting, doesn't it? You're going to go out into the world basically with the clothes on your back. But I say, too, that hopefully there will be many here today willing to take on this role because it's a vital one. We know for sure that many years ago, 70 did answer that call, and many more since then. But here today, are we willing to take on that mission as well? To go out into the world to spread the good news of Jesus Christ in a world that is in much need of hope. Now contemplate on the gospel and open your imaginations into this task. There before you is the dusty road upon which you and your fellow disciples will tread, and over time will disperse into different directions. You do not know how this journey will be or where it may even take you. There is no food or lodging arranged for you. You take no worldly goods, but what you take is the teachings of Jesus. One step, then another, as you set forth to announce that He will be arriving in the villages and the towns, and that He will be coming, the carpenter from Nazareth, who holds for you something that you may or may not have heard about. That He brings with Him the greatest gift, the greatest message of all time. Could you do it? Could you leave what you know and set out with no worldly goods? It's a tough question, but perhaps even a tougher one to answer. You probably are thinking, well, that was 2,000 years ago. Times are different now, right? But are they? Are they really different? I don't think so. So I have a modern day story. And I always say that people love stories. From the time we're children, even into adulthood, we love stories. And this one is a true story. It takes place in the early 20th century, so not that long ago, in Shenandoah, in the state of Pennsylvania. And there lived a rebellious young man, the son of Polish immigrants. He described himself as a tough guy bully who liked to get his own way and would try to outdo anyone just to prove a point. His father was so exasperated by his son's behavior that he didn't know what to do with him. At one point, he thought of taking his son to the local police and telling them to send him to reform school to shape him up. But then something happened. A teenage boy in grade 8 one day came to his father and said, "Dad, I want to be a priest." Well, his father was beyond skeptical, believing his son could he ever embody the piety and the kindness required to enter that vocation? Even more, to become, as his son would tell him, to join the Jesuits, and then to observe strict obedience to superiors and rigorous academic study. To many people's surprise, and probably even to the boy himself, Walter entered the seminary. Each day he would run 5 miles around the lake, or swim across the lake in November when the lake was just below freezing, just because he could. During Lent, he would eat nothing but bread and water, and in a strange and mysterious way, divine providence was at work preparing him for his mission that was to come. In 1929, Pope Pius XI founded a Roman university for the purpose of training Western priests in the Latin Rite to work among the Eastern Rite Catholics at Russia. You see, Russia was in the throes of a revolution, and among other things, besides the political changes, it set out to destroy the church. Pope Pius knew this was happening, and he founded this university that would be able to teach in both the Latin and the Oriental Rite. And he put out a call for volunteers, volunteer priests that would take up the call to go into this mission where the church was now being considered an enemy of the state. They were rounding up priests, deacons, nuns, and other religious to be sent off to prisons, to labor camps, or worse. Over that time period, they just disappeared, many never to be seen again. So now, Father Walter goes into service. Now, because the church was under attack in Russia at this time, he just couldn't walk across the border and say, "Hi, I'm Father Walter, and I'm here to do God's work." No. So he went to Poland. It was at the beginning of World War II, and while in Poland, he was sent with another priest. So like our gospel today, they were sent out in twos to go in to this place of wolves. He didn't have to really enter Russia because Russia invaded Poland while he was there, and Poland by annex became a part of Russia. So now he was there. He had to go in kind of undercover, and he took on the name of Vladimir Lipinski, who was, to him, a widower whose family had been killed in a German bomb run. But even though he was in the heart of danger and in the heart of enemy territory, he was still taken into homes of those who were followers of Jesus Christ, much like the ones who were sent out were taken into the homes where they bid them peace, and peace was bid back to them. He came to deliver the message of Jesus Christ, and the hospitality that was given to him through peace and love would sustain him. However, a year later, he was found out and arrested by the KGB, or the startings of the KGB, under false accusations that he was a spy of the Vatican, of all things. And they told him, "We know who you are, Father. You're not Lipinski," but he kept his story. And what happened was he was found guilty of espionage and served then to go to prison. He was later transferred to a Siberian gulag. Not a nice place to be at any time. But after his arrest, he knew that he would be under watch, and anything he did had to be done secretly. While he was in incarceration, he met another priest. The one that he had left with was also incarcerated, and they'd been separated. And he met another priest, and after 5 years of not being able to celebrate Mass, him and this other priest decided that they would have Mass the best way they could, to hear confessions, and to spread the sacraments to those who were religious, and spread the faith to those who had none. This became their parish. He and his fellow prisoners used to find and save raisins just to make a raisin wine. They would try to scrounge bread and hold it as long as they could without it being found. And they used the gold case, the top of a gold case of a watch, for a paten to have the Eucharist. And he thanked God daily for the opportunity to work among this hidden flock, consoling and comforting men who had thought themselves beyond God's grace. Now, despite all hardships, this experience also transformed Walter. That despite these conditions, he received the grace of truly understanding obedience to God. And in that conversion, he became, as he would say later, a totally free man in the most unlikely of places. You see, Jesus never said it would be easy. He told the disciples he was sending them out, lambs among the wolves. They had a choice to conform to the world and preach a message that made people feel comfortable in their complacency, or they could preach the message of Jesus that was bound to be opposed because it called for fundamental change. The disciples, the 70 that went out, may have started their journey perhaps with apprehension, the same as Walter. They did not know what would happen, but when they returned, we hear of their enthusiasm and the call to mission through Jesus Christ. At the end of every Mass, when a priest or a deacon says, the Mass is ended, to go in peace, to love and serve the Lord, or to glorify the Lord by your life. It is not just merely a statement. It is an invitation. It's a call to go beyond the architecture of the church, through the door. But it is not really going out in through a door as much as going into the entrance into the vineyard. I saw statistics many years ago that said only 7% of Catholics hear the call to enter the mission field. If only 7% of us did our job, how long would we stay in our jobs? If only 7% actually worked at their vocation of marriage, how long would they be in their marriage? So we are called to do this as disciples of Christ by our baptism. So like the 70 who were sent, like Walter Cizak, Father Walter Cizak, and many others, we must go out. Yet even 2,000 years later, the work is still great. And the laborers, unfortunately, are still few. But with our concerted belief and to answer the mission call, we can turn that around and know that Jesus wants us to speak and to live his message of peace and of love and of hope. If we don't do it, we can't rely on others. You can't turn to the person next to you and say, I really can't do it. Could you? No, we all have to take that cross and carry it. And it is not a cross of burden. It is a cross of love. So, when Jesus went out into the towns and villages, when we hear his words in Scripture, we are hearing so much more than from a carpenter from Nazareth. I'll leave you with these words of Father Walter Cizak. God has a special purpose, a special love, a special providence to all those he has created. Every movement of our life has a purpose. That every action of ours, no matter how dull it may seem, or routine, or trivial it may seem in itself, has a dignity and a worth beyond all of our human understanding.